Hey guys, do you work in emergency medicine? An absolutely crazy and intense environment where you see things every day that a regular person doesn't see once in their entire life? You feel burned out, unappreciated, like there's no one you can talk to about the things you are struggling with? Well, you are not alone. I have a bunch of real professionals with real stories here with me today that can relate to your struggles. I've struggled with burnout, discouragement, frustration many times and still struggle with it. My name is Aaron. I've been in emergency medicine for 15 years as an EMT, paramedic, and now emergency medicine PA, and I am the host of PracticalEMS podcast. And with that, I will introduce my guests and we will get started. All right, guys, so welcome back to this episode. We're going to get back into the conversation. I'm going to introduce this topic as kind of a general, what are the challenges we have in emergency medicine? And I should clarify, I say emergency medicine because it encompasses EMS and the emergency department, which are, both the areas that I'm passionate about and have worked in. So that's kind of why I say emergency medicine. But for example, I mean, we deal with hard stuff every single day, and trying to get my thoughts straight here.
I'm the one with the ADHD.
The basic question I want to go into is, what challenges do you have in emergency medicine and how do we overcome those? And I'll even just start by saying, I'm pretty burned out from the last 4 shifts I worked. Doug and I worked a couple shifts together this weekend that were really rough. I mean, high patient volume, high acuity. We're seeing a ton of people. Some of them are really sick. And getting off those shifts, you're just you're done. You don't want to talk to anybody else. You're mentally just fried. And that's fairly common. I mean, I feel like I have pretty good mentality towards emergency medicine, but in the last 4 days that I worked, I feel pretty burned. I need a couple days off before I feel like I can go back and do it well. And so burnout's something that I think does kind of creep up on you and sometimes can get significantly worse on a given shift, depending on what stuff you're dealing with. Because depending on the patients that are coming in and how high the acuity is and how much critical care stuff you're doing in a given day, I think burnout can kind of creep up and then boom, all of a sudden you get off work and you're like, I don't want to do that again tomorrow. So I want to hear what kind of advice you guys have on the difficulties in emergency medicine, how you overcome burnout. This is a huge topic. Lots of EMTs and paramedics I talk to want to talk about burnout. If you have any specific stories, I don't have anything specific to talk about other than, I just had 4 days of seeing a ton of patients, really high acuity, some patients with psychiatric emergencies that want to yell at us and scream at us. And, you can try to, tune that stuff out and say it doesn't bother you. But 4 days of dealing with that stuff, I'm kind of I need a day off. I'm not going to be my best PA Aaron if I have to do that one more day in a row. So what do you guys got?
I don't know. Mine's depressing, so I'll just leave it there. But no, the first time I got burned out, I was on night shift with my old partner. He had to call me out on it because I was snipping, just talking shit. And then my ex-fiance and I were going through a rough time. And then I was drinking about a bottle or a half bottle a day, And then eventually I started getting the shakes and I was just no, it's not withdrawal. It's not happening. But then I would get to work and I'm snipping at my partner. Him and I almost actually fist fought at.
Oh my God. He would have crushed you.
Yeah, no, seriously, he was burned out too. And it him and I just snapped on each other for no reason. We were getting gas at one of the gas stations. We actually had an FI with us and he was driving and I forgot what I said or what he said, but we just started cussing at each other. I'm in his face, literally in the opening of the gas station and people are and then him and I just sat there and talked shit. The funniest part is we actually got a late call, but we still worked together on the scene. But then after that, we were fuck you, go fuck yourself. And yeah, it was funny. And then no, because he told me, he's like, Nate, I will beat your ass. I was like, I'll stab you till you're dead. Him and I were going at it. Yeah, we were just going at it with each other. And then eventually, we were like, I love you. And I love you too. Piece of shit. I'll see you tomorrow. But I had to take a month off. I actually went up to Montana to see my brother and some friends. And then this is sadly where the reality kicks in. I almost blew my head off. So I actually ended up going to the hospital there, withdrawing. That sucked ass. I have a whole new perspective on that. The hospital in Montana, at the one I went at, I didn't talk to a single doc. The most person I talked to was the guy rolling me upstairs. They took me to gynecology for some reason. Yeah, that was the...
How far were you?
Yeah, exactly. I was having contractions. But yeah, no, I was there for 24 hours and, you know, I sat there in withdrawal. I'm like, well, that sucked ass. And then eventually the doc comes in, hey, you're awake. I'm like, I've been awake this whole fucking time. And he's like, no, you haven't. Yes, I have, because I've been shaking this whole night, like vomiting. And he was like, did the Ativan help? I was like, that's what you gave me? I didn't do anything. But yeah, no, I had to, you know, that's when I weaned off the alcohol. And I actually told my friend, I was like, if I reach for a single bottle, punch me in the face. He's like, are you sure? And I'm like, punch me in the face. And Spitz, if you're watching, I'm talking about you.
Do you drink anymore after that?
So my wife and I, after a few months of not drinking, I wanted to see if I could do it again. So my wife and I have a rule. I'll only drink at the house. I don't go to bars. I don't do anything like that. And my limit is 5 shooters. That's it. And I don't touch anymore. With the whole me getting fired, there has been a little bit more. And, you know, my wife, thankfully, has called me out on it. But that's just like, how am I going to pay my medical bills? Because my Corlinor, my medication without insurance is $2,200. Yeah. And then, you know, just normal stress like that. But hey, I got a job. It's good.
That's awesome.
That was my burnout.
Would your advice to be, because it sounds like you're not abstinent, right, from alcohol, but would you tell people to drink?
That's
if
a big
they've
word. That means that you don't
abstaining, not drinking. Would you tell people that, like, let's say alcohol's somebody's vice, right? You're talking to a new EMT who just had a real shitty day. Alcohol's their vice.
Yeah.
Would you say go home and have a drink?
No, because that easily becomes 1 drink becomes 2, 2 becomes 3. You sit here and eventually, like I said, I was in denial. I was in withdrawal. I was, until my old partner hooked me up on the monitor and I was at 140. I'm sweating. I'm sitting here shaking. He's like, you need to go home. But no, substances become a very easy outlet. It does. You know, even whenever I was on opiates, like in high school, it becomes such an easy outlet because it takes you away from that emotion or problem at the time. But it's not, you're not going to the problem. And all it's doing is adding another problem.
Compounds it when you come back.
Compounds it when it comes back.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like with like nicotine. I mean, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I have nicotine. It helps me calm down. But going to substances is just a quick way to destroying your body and destroying your mental and emotions, you know. So I'd say completely not. You know, find other things. Even if you go on a walk, you go to a run, you go to the gym, you know, even separating yourself from work, you know, that helps with that, you know.
Alcohol is not my vice, but I can totally relate, because what I would do is after a hard day at work, I want to eat an entire Little Caesars pizza.
Yeah.
And if I were to do that every time I had a hard day at work, I'd be 300 pounds. So I think, like what you said, like going for a walk, doing something else, do a freaking cold plunge. Fill a tub of water in your backyard and have a hammer next to it to break the ice and jump in a cold plunge for 5 minutes.
You assume I have a backyard. No,
fill up your bathtub. Our tap water here is 50 degrees. That's freaking cold.
But even with the food stuff, right? Because like, you know, like you get that fight or fight, feed or breed, right? When you eat, you get that like nice little calming.
It's all about dopamine, right?
It's all about dopamine. It's
all about dopamine.
And then you get so used to that, like that chemical itself becomes a drug.
Yeah.
You know, and then even with eating a lot, then you can get into eating disorders.
Yeah.
You know, sorry, I can talk hours about this shit.
No, I just think it's important. Everybody's going to cope some way with a hard shift, especially in our line of work where the propensity for it to be very difficult is very high.
It's a big word. Look, I'm great at medicine, but like these big ass words, even if it's like, yeah, it annoyed my old partner. He's like, Nate, you need to open a dictionary.
Should get you one of those calendars.
I will too.
Word of the day.
Word of the day, propitiatory or whatever the fuck you just said.
Propensity.
What does that mean? Casey. See, that one I know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Desire. Yeah.
Thank you. I know what that word means.
An inclination or natural tendency to behave in a particular way.
Should have one in front of Nate here.
Yeah.
Listens and it just chooses words over certain, over anything over like 7
letters.
Automatically pulls it up.
Anything over 2 syllables.
Yeah. If you're talking, you just see me type, that means I don't know what you said.
Right.
What else you guys got?
Well, we've talked about burnout a lot, you and I actually, and people think that they burn out because they run too many calls. They have too many patient interactions. And they did a study that actually at one point in time, they said if you run 2,000 calls a year or 2,000 patient contacts a year or more, tends to burn you out. On the other end of that spectrum, if you run less than 200 calls a year or 200 patient contacts a year, it burns you out.
Okay.
So you
Does that matter on the age
of the provider?
of the provider? No, the provider.
Oh, I'm not sure. I'm not
Because
sure
I
if that
think-
was that was.
I think younger in your career, it would make more of a difference to have a lower number burn you out.
Yeah.
As you get a
Although,
little older in your career,
Yeah.
sometimes it's okay to say, I just need to slow it down.
although last week on one of my shifts, I pitched a no-hitter. And it's, after 10 hours, I was like ready to bang my head. I mean, I don't know if you know how they do it. We post, we have variable staffing. So we post in different spots according to the number of ambulances that we have available. We post them all over town, right? So you're never in the same post. So they posted us at a post not too far from where we're sitting right now. And I was there from 8 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock.
Oh my
Never
gosh.
got asked to move, never got asked my location. Yeah. Our dispatch software that we have never went off. It's like,
You went
You're like,
pee.
is this working?
Yeah.
Is this
You
working?
went pee in a King Super's bathroom 12 times.
Yeah.
Yes. It was,
Did my groceries.
So there, I think you just got to be kind of wary that sometimes the other end of the spectrum is not good either.
Everything you hear today from myself and my guests is opinion only. It does not represent any organizations or companies that any of us are affiliated with. The stories you hear have been modified to protect patient privacy, and any resemblance to real individuals is coincidental only. This is for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice nor used to diagnose any medical or health care conditions. Well, I think when you aren't busy or you're not seeing patients, you kind of lack purpose, right? And
Yeah.
That's, one thing I like about emergency medicine is usually there's not a lack of things to do. And so you go to work and at the end of the day, even if it's high volume and you saw a lot of people, at the end of the day, you're like, yeah, I made a difference on a handful of these patients. Some of them needed to be in the emergency department. We took good care of them, and it can actually kind of give you energy and prevent you from being burnt out. So I can get why not doing anything all day would burn you out.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, when we've talked about this before, I agree that you shouldn't take your job home with you. Sometimes you have to. Sometimes it's just so heavy on your mind that it goes home with you. But for the most part, I don't rehash my calls, good or bad, necessarily on the way. Once I walk in that door, I'm done. Unless my roommate, she'll ask me once in a while. Because she'll, she's a paramedic as well. And so sometimes, we get into those conversations. But I think one of the pieces of advice I would give is do something different. Woodwork. We talked about that. Woodwork is a good one. It's slow. It's methodical. It builds patience. It's completely different from taking care of a patient and doing those assessments and treatments and, quilting, whatever, art. But do something different. Stay away from the substances. I don't know if anybody's heard of 75 Hard, but it's kind of a cool program.
I'm on day 9, and I did it at the end of last year, and I'm doing it again right now.
Did you get through the whole 75? I haven't started it.
What's that? I've never heard of that.
You have to look it up. It's so you start out, you have to do certain things and you follow it to the letter. And if you don't, you start over.
If you fail a day, you fail day 74, you
start
just
over.
got to start the whole thing over.
Is it
again.
just like activities?
Well,
Or like
So it's 75 days of, you do 2 45-minute workouts every day. One of them has to be outside. You drink a gallon of water. You stick to a diet plan with no cheat meals, no alcohol, 10 pages of a nonfiction book. You do that every day for 75 days.
Good for you guys.
And it's not a,
I'm with you on that one.
Good for you guys.
Good for you guys.
yeah.
I'm a
Look, I
huge
still need
believer in it
vodka
though.
in my
'cause
system.
So, cold shower is I think that's part of it.
It's one of the
It's
additional
one of the
phases.
additional
Yeah.
phases. So you were talking about plunges.
Mhm.
I was visiting one of our mutual friends, Corey. You know,
larger ears, yeah. Larger ear gentleman.
Sorry, Corey. But I was just visiting him because his office is right down the street right before we came. And he does cold plunge every day. And he said today will be his 187th day in a row that he's done cold plunge.
I need your face. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
There you go.
And he says that it's something that now he's to the point where if he wouldn't do it, it would be a bad thing for him. He looks forward to it. And
well, and I'll say the point of it's not like a fitness challenge. That's a side effect, but the whole point's to build mental toughness. And so that when life sucks and you have a shitty day, you don't, go get drunk. You're like, well, I had a shitty day, so I'm going to go run for 45 minutes. And that's
all you, bud.
Yeah. And so like one of these days that Doug and I had together all 4 of those days were just freaking brutal. And 2 of them were with Doug. And I had to go do my outdoor workout after shift, which sucks because it was like, it's freezing outside, it's dark, but I did it anyway.
Wasn't
and I
that
felt
like 2 a.m?
It might have been.
Oh, dude,
that's dedication.
That is dedication.
But it really does help. Like me doing that, because what I would have preferred to do is go sit on my couch, watch TV, and eat an entire pizza. That's what I would prefer to do. But doing the walk helps way more than doing that, because the next day I can wake up and I'm a little bit healthier. I'm not, 400 pounds
like
from
food
eating Little
drunk.
Caesars. So I think that's the benefit to it. I think is when life is hard, you don't turn to something unhealthy. You actually turn to, the stuff that you've structured in. And I will say cold plunging is pretty beneficial too. It's a pretty good dopamine release, and it teaches you mental toughness, because I don't have a cold plunge. I fill up my bathtub with 50-degree water because that's our groundwater temperature. And you look at that and you're like, I really don't want to fucking do this.
Yeah.
And you turn off that part of your brain that says,
just
no,
do it.
don't do, and you just get in and you're like,
do it.
And for the whole 5 minutes, it sucks. And, but afterwards you feel awesome. And it's just about training your brain to do the work regardless. And it's the same for me at work too. Like when they're rooming patients after patient after patient, I'm like, I don't want to keep seeing people, but I'm like, I'm seeing them all because I can move them, So I think it changes your mentality about everything in life, and you can do a lot of hard things.
And what do you call it?
Teaches you
75?
75 hard, yeah.
75 hard?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a you can look it up. It's
like
got
an
an app and everything.
That's like the boot camp, and then you do live hard, which is the whole year. But I'm like obsessed with it right now.
So another one of our mutual acquaintances, Eric, who lives in a tent, he's done it, I think, 3 times back to back.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And so I don't know if he's doing it now, but anyway. But he's mentally tough anyway. He's very disciplined.
I'm driving my wife nuts with it, but I think everybody should do it. My wife's sick and tired of hearing about it. But
Corey was funny. He said that when he first started doing the cold plunge, he said, you get that, you hyperventilate, because you're like, he goes, when I get in, he goes, I'm like that for about 3 breaths. He said, and then I'm good. And he said, he goes, I really look forward to doing it every day.
It'd be really awkward if someone gets in and they got diver's reflex and just.
You're not supposed to put your head in the water. Don't put your head in the water.
Thankfully, I know that now.
Don't dunk your head in the water.
Aaron, I fucked up.
Reflex, not good.
Aaron, I fucked up.
All right, what else you guys got on? What's difficult in emergency medicine? What are coping strategies?
Yeah, I think for coping strategies for the whole burnout is number one is realize you're burned out. And I was there. I was really significantly burned out. Probably, I'm going to say it was probably about 4 years ago. I had a countdown on I'd carry a clipboard around, and every day I'd write one less number of how many shifts I'm going to work until I quit.
Yeah.
I had a shift countdown, and, and everybody knew it. And it was at a point because I felt that I was so burned out that I'm like, I got to get through this to make sure my kids are okay and to pay the bills. And then when this is over, I'm done. Screw this, I'm out. And the thing that, and that was probably when I was working 16 or 17 shifts, and I was on an extra committee. So the thing I had to do was get off the committee at the hospital, and I had to cut down to like 14 shifts. And one of the other things that really, for me as a doc, has lessened my burnout was when we started doing shifts at different places. And I didn't have to do all my shifts at the 2 very busy, potentially very painful shifts.
Yeah, can I ask, do you guys go to, I'm so sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Do you guys go to urgent cares too? Because I've seen different,
freestanding.
Freestanding.
So we work some freestanding. So once we started working freestandings, I've called those my career extenders because I went from pretty much thinking I would be 20 years and out of this position or out of this profession forever to I can do this for another few years. And I kind of split my time between the big 2 hospitals and a few of the standalones. And that's made it very tolerable for me. And being off nights, as a night person for so many years, I was so used to that. But I realize in retrospect that it's hard to work nights. It's super hard to work nights. So when you get off of nights and your quality of life just seems to improve a little bit, and then you cut down in shifts and then you get off committees and now you have different opportunities. That's what really kind of saved my career in this from, going to work at Home Depot the rest of my life. Not that that's bad because I was like, I just want to maybe drive a tractor or work at Home Depot. That was what I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm quitting this shit and I'm out. But thankfully it's changed so I can still do what I do and I still enjoy what I do most of the time. Not every time.
Yeah.
But so that's one of the coping things for me. And then the other thing is having someone you can talk to.
Yeah.
Like I said before, whether that's your spouse, whether that's a coworker, whether that's a therapist. I was never a big therapy person in my life until a few years ago. And my wife and I had talked about it. And I'm a huge proponent now. So the first thing, any of my friends, whether they're policemen, whether they're firefighters, whether they're doctors, whether they're nurses, I'm like, and they're having a problem, I'm like, you need to talk to a therapist because they truly do help you. And that's probably one of the things I would advise significantly for people that don't believe in it. Try it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those people are trained to help you fix yourself.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with therapy.
God, no.
I mean, there's so much misconception around it. You have the anxiety, the PTSD, the bipolar stuff. You go to therapy, you're crazy, right? I've heard that shit all my life.
I bet.
But there's nothing wrong with therapy.
No,
even if it's literally talking to a complete stranger and then you just talk.
Right.
And then eventually you'll say something and you'll start to choke or maybe an emotion kicks in and you're like, okay, let's focus on that. Or it's things that you don't even know that's bothering you, the whole keep it down or with guys, it is what it is. With guys, I'm fine, and eventually that explodes.
Right.
That's how people start shotguns, or get into alcohol, that kind of stuff. So no, 100% agree. There is nothing wrong with therapy. I did EMDR. That was the weirdest thing I've ever done because all I got to do, my therapist is stare at a dot and do this. And I'm like, okay. So literally she had this big ass machine and it's just a dot that goes back and forth. After about 10 minutes, I'm just bawling because because apparently the way it works is that it helps, how did she put it? It helps find memories and help you cope with it in an emotional
You're
way.
looking at a dot that's
literally.
back and forth?
I'm just staring right forward and I just do this back and forth.
Huh.
And then eventually it was very weird, almost like I was hallucinating. It was very strange. And then the second one I did was I held buzzards. And then I sat there and I closed my eyes and it would just go bzz, bzz, just all for 5-10 minutes. And then we would go into these memories and then eventually more and more with EMDR. Now I can talk about it. And I feel fine. It's very strange.
So you feel like it helped overall?
I feel like it helped 100%.
Interesting.
Whenever I first talked about the whole baby in the oven, with that call, I did EMDR, and after talking with a therapist and now I can talk about it. Sure, I'll choke up about it whenever I talk about the call, but usually if I even think about it, I'll get sheltered and quiet, so no, EMDR helped me a lot. It was very interesting. Sorry, I rambled.
Sorry. What else you guys got on this topic? Who hasn't? I know Sarah hasn't spoken yet.
Yeah, Sarah, I'm so sorry. How are you?
No, I love hearing the stories because honestly, I hope you're not alone. I wish I knew what burnout had looked like for me. So I wonder if I could have helped myself if I had known what burnout looked like for me specifically. I think that would be some big advice that I would give to newer employees and in medicine in general is know or think through what your coping mechanisms are, good or bad, and know what the unhealthy side of that looks like. Because I think in my first job, I stayed 2 years too long and it caused a lot of really personal, painful situations that eventually led to me leaving that job. But looking back, if I had known that it was not healthy or normal, to have very low level suicidal thoughts walking into work, like where you're just like bawling as you walk into work. That's not good.
Yeah.
And you don't share that because it feels weak. And it feels weird because it's just work. It's fine. But it's really not. And something that I see in new nurses or new grads is this idea of never. I could never get off night shift. I could never get off day shift. I could never leave the emergency department. I could never leave this. I could never. And that pigeonholes you into an unhealthy place, I think, to a degree where you can always leave. This is just a job. Nothing is worth your mental health. Nothing is worth your family. Nothing is worth you being here. And if you know that you can leave at any time, and just having that freedom to be able to walk away and giving yourself that freedom, you can switch shifts. You can go and you can have a better work-life balance when you're with your family and you actually get to go to see that recital or that baseball game. And I still don't necessarily take advantage of it as much as I wish that I had. But taking those mental health days, when I think of one time at my current job where I was crying going into work because I was missing my nephew's birthday party. So silly. Like, this is not a reason to call off. And I wish anything that I had now, because they don't live here anymore and I'm not as able to be as present. And it's one of those realizations that nothing is worth your ability to maintain work. You can find another job. And you can make a difference anywhere with the right attitude and mindset. And you have the ability to maybe be happier and more satisfied. And it doesn't require you being in any one certain job, one certain shift. And maybe look through that and have key people in your life that both you can talk to and who can speak truth back into your life, saying, hey, I don't like who you've become in the last 6 months. We need to make a change. And even if you can't see that for yourself, I can see it in you. And maybe have set like a contract with them. Like, if you say, quit this job, I trust you enough to know that maybe I don't see the truth of what's happening right now. Or maybe I can make a change.
Yeah.
Loved it.
That's good.
There's something that I saw. I don't know if it was a meme or something like that. It was just some motivational thing that I saw on, whether it was Instagram or Facebook or whatever, but it said, no one's going to remember that you worked that extra shift or you put in overtime except your family.
Yeah, that's true.
Your job doesn't care.
No.
They don't care.
Nope.
So when it all comes down to it, put your family first.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah, the extra money from overtime, I think, ends up having significant repercussions later if you put that first all the time. And I mean,
absolutely.
Certainly there's times of life where, that money has to take priority, right? And your family, I think it's really hard to be a completely balanced dad, husband, employee at all times. Like, there's going to be times in life, I think, where you have to emphasize work, and there's going to be easier times in life where your family can take priority. So I understand that, but I think the more you give work your priority and all your time, the longer you do that, I mean, the more you're going to be burned out, and your family's going to suffer, and they're going to realize it too,
For all of us that are in healthcare, it's like you look back at how many Christmases did you miss? How many birthdays did you miss? How many New Year's? How many, neighborhood parties? How much of this? How much of that? And it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot for those of us that do this.
Yeah.
I had to go to Home Depot on Christmas Day for a furnace filter, and they were closed. And I'm like, how in the heck is Home Depot? I have worked Christmas the last 5 years, and I can't buy a furnace filter on Christmas Day.
What the fuck?
Turns out our job is a lot more crucial than a lot of jobs.
They have one job open.
All right, guys, I'm going to jump in here. I want to thank everybody on the live stream. If you guys got any value out of this today, and don't worry, guys, we're going to keep talking, but if you got any value out of this today, if it resonated with you, if it encouraged you, the only thing I ask is you subscribe to the show on whatever podcast platform you're listening to. Give a 5-star review. That will help a ton. I don't make any money from this podcast and actually pay a fair amount of money to do it. So if you can support the show, that'll be very helpful. If you go to PracticalEMS.com, you can join the email list so you know when all the episodes are coming out. There's an EKG course on there as well if you want to financially support the show. And we'll jump back into the conversation with these folks next time. Thanks, guys.